So I'm Caleb Bornman, and I want to share a journey I took about a year ago with connecting to my dad and my grandpa through photography. You might ask, well, how's that related to tech? Well, we got a live demo up here that I'm going to show you. But if we can get the slides switched over. Awesome. So, intergenerational bridges. What I want to do tonight is share how technology can impact all the soft things about life. You know, I could come up here and talk about Linux or any one random ESP32 thing I did to make this work. I'm not going to talk much about that at all. We can talk about that with questions and whatnot, but what I want to focus on tonight is how the choices we make about what to build impact the people in our lives. So I drop this in the general chat on Slack, but if you want to pull up high-res images, you can go to the blog post I made. I'll give you a minute to do that. But a little bit about me. I'm Caleb. I grew up here, went to high school, and in high school I took a film photography class, black and white film in the darkroom. I think that class went away like a year after I took it. And when I was, I've been a photographer ever since. I really hadn't connected to the arts in a way until that class. And it became a career for me. I paid my way through college with photography. And one part of photography that I've always liked is actually the mechanisms, the gears, the building stuff, fixing stuff. And so throughout my college career doing photography for weddings and portraits, I ended up hacking together a bunch of lenses, and I'm a big fan of vintage lenses on modern cameras. During the pandemic, there was a huge spike in popularity about film photography, and I was caught up in that spike. So I bought, this Leica from the 60s and fixed it up. I built a darkroom in my basement, and I started generating this skill set around being able to develop all different types of the modern standards of photography: E6, C41, ECM2 movie film. And what it allowed me to do is, get in the realm of developing at home, printing at home, and having this general skill set. So to my surprise, my dad one day said, "Hey, I found a box of my slides from the 80s that I haven't seen in 25 years. Maybe we can find an old projector and we can look at them together, because I know you like photography or whatever." And I said, well, I can do one better. This is my thing, let's digitize them and get really excellent scans of all your old photos and build them, a collection of your own photography. And so he brought his box of slides from the 80s. And slides are these little pieces of film that are cut individually and put into plastic or paper wrappers. And then they drop into machines like this. And this then shoots into a lens or makes them on the wall. That's the process. And so there's options for what to use to do the process of digitizing. This $10 flatbed scanner I got on Facebook Marketplace is actually great. It does some awesome results, but it's really slow, extremely slow. And so I said, all right, well, I already do camera scanning, which is a bit of the modern alternative, which is where you use a macro lens, you shine light up through the film, and you just take a picture of a piece of film. And I've got a high-resolution, modern digital camera, and so it's pretty straightforward to, if you've got the right equipment, you line everything up, shine light through it, take a picture, and you get extremely high-resolution images. When we did this process for my dad, you can't see the quality on the screen here, that's why I sent a link you can look at and zoom in, but we're able to get extremely high fidelity images that get down to the individual grain of the film. 60 megapixels on a modern digital sensor is way more than you need for a 35 millimeter slide. And so you can see every bit of grain in these photos, making almost a perfect reproduction. There's caveats and things about it, but you get extremely high resolution detailed images. This is my dad, age 18, in Brazil, holding a piranha. He served with MCC, a local organization here, their SALT program, doing water resourcing projects for a year. They just dropped him off in the middle of Brazil and left. And he took a camera that looks just like this. Actually, it is this, not this exactly, but the same model. He took a camera with him, it's a consumer level camera, and ended up doing the thing that photographers actually do. Just put their bodies in the right place at the right time. That's 95% of photography. Pressing the button is not the interesting part. And so he took these incredible portraits of people doing their day-to-day life in Brazil. He also documented amazing moments, like this barge carrying grain from across the river. And this photo came up. We were doing this one slide at a time on this setup that we had made. This photo popped up and said, "Deb, what's going on in this photo?" He said, "Well, those sticks are to mark the safe spot to cross the river so that you don't get swept downstream." Then he went out and said, "Yeah, I crossed that river at a different spot than this, but it came up to my neck. I crossed the river because I was going to my next homestay, and I didn't know where to go past the river. They didn't give me good enough directions. So I started asking all the people walking along the road, and this guy said, yeah, I know where to go. Follow me." He was on horseback, and my dad ran behind him for 45 minutes, and then finally ended up getting to the right spot. No one was home. It got dark. So he climbed the wall, because the door's locked, and there was a note on the stove saying, "Oh yeah, let yourself in, yeah," but they locked the door in. They came in the morning and it was all fine. But this photo to me is like the perfect example of, he hadn't seen these slides for 25 years. That's, at the time that was about the time that I was born. And so I had never heard this story before. And the act of just like getting this set up to get a really high resolution image meant that I got to hear that story from my dad's perspective. Something that I don't think he would have ever told me if he hadn't seen the photo. This is my dad after that year in Brazil hiking Machu Picchu. He was meeting up with some friends, and the images he took of Machu Picchu feel like they could have been in a National Geographic magazine. Now, if you zoom in on these photos, you can see incredible amounts of detail from a tiny 35mm slide. You guys can come up and check these out after the fact. But the amount of detail here is incredible. I don't think I really understood, but in the early 2000s, when everyone was switching to digital photography, the average person's average photo dropped in quality dramatically. They were taking a lot more photos, but the average photo was like horrible quality. And so these photos hold an incredible amount of detail. This is like the Incan stone cutting and everything in Machu Picchu. My dad took some photos that truly are incredible. This photo I printed out 13 by 19, and it is gorgeous. So I encourage you to go take a look at that link. You can click on the photos, zoom in, and see all the detail. But a simple process using a modern digital camera hooked up with a good lens meant that these photos can be brought back to life in a way that was really special to my dad. He got to tell me these stories about him as a young man, and one of the things he told me was, I now see, looking back at these photos, glimpses of the person I was to become. Seeing the start of being a kid from the Midwest who had never left the United States, to being dropped off in the middle of Brazil. Now my dad works in international peace relations. This story of seeing these photos helped him connect the dots of where he started becoming who he is today. And so I think these images are incredible. I told my dad, "Yeah, you're now a photographer. You didn't know it, but you are." Okay, but I really wanted a better solution than manually picking up each slide, sticking in front of the camera, taking the picture, pulling it out. It's a long process. It took about 10 hours to do instead of 500 photos. And I thought to myself, well, okay, what if we use some tech to make a bit of a better system? So I thought, all right, there's these slide projectors. They throw up images on the walls. What if we just rip out the projector lens, use the indexing mechanism, and stick our camera in front of it instead? I did that. I built this little prototype, 3D print a little mount that's really janky. Don't look at it too closely. And so I was able to make this system where you can see that I'm just shining a light through the indexer and then have a macro lens set up. It's the exact same thing as what we were doing before, just with the addition of this automation. I have a background in microelectronics and whatnot, and so I just grabbed the ESP32 and said, all right, I can just trigger this to index by using the remote control function, which is just like a wired remote control where you touch two pins together and it indexes to the next image. So I put a little relay in with the ESP32, and I said, all right, well, what's the easiest way to get the ESP32 to take a picture on the camera? I could have figured out the SDK for these modern cameras, but I thought, well, let's just do the easy thing. It's meant for Bluetooth stuff. So I have it set up as a Bluetooth mouse that connects to my laptop and presses the button. So that's what we're going to do. Hover my mouse over the button. Wait for it to connect. There we go. If it connects on the Bluetooth, let's check. One sec. Oh, yeah, now it's okay. There we go. Okay. Unfortunately, it's clicking. I think at the live display, the lag is a bit too much. Okay, there you go. So you can hear it. Move, take the picture on the camera. Move, take the picture on the camera. This is not crazy tech stuff, okay? Like, we're just doing two different independent one-click actions. But what it allows you to do is drop 80 slides in a carousel tray, take pictures of them. As long as you set it all correctly, you've automated the process. So this is a janky solution that actually works out really well. And I was able to take a large set of my grandparents' photos and do the same process, but instead of that manual action, this little bit of automation meant that it took way less time. So here are some photos from my grandparents raising kids in the 60s and 70s. Here's them as a young married couple on their honeymoon. And you might think, what's this little thing right here? What is that? That's not dust. That's a seagull. And if you, I don't know if I can zoom in on the presentation right now. That's a seagull flying in the background, right? Like the detail and the quality of these pictures is really something to behold. And this will be more relevant in a little bit, but I've never seen a picture of my grandpa really as a younger man. There just aren't that many photos of him. And so this photo means a lot to me personally. My grandparents have a potato farm in Mannheim that they raised their three boys and two girls on this farm. And I tried to explain that you don't understand, like the life that these photos show is like the idyllic William Eggleston photo series of growing up in the 60s and 70s. And a lot of the family, especially my cousins, had never seen this side of the family. They didn't know these photos even existed. And so by automating, we got to see pictures. I had no clue that, this was the life on the farm. My family, when potatoes hit like $17 a bushel or something one year, my grandpa had sworn that he'd take the whole family on a cross-country road trip. And they have photos from that road trip, like this one, where you can see every hair on this bear. In the off-season, my grandpa drove a school bus, and there's all these family photos. When I look at these, I'm like, you look oddly close to my cousins and whatnot. This is my mom. And something you'll be not surprised to hear is that there are so many motorcycles from the 60s and 70s and 80s. Just farm life. And these photos are important to me because they connect to the broader story of like who my family is in this area. Because my grandpa turned 90 a year and a bit ago. We celebrated his 90th birthday as a family. And I showed a long slideshow of all these could sit around and talk. And my grandparents invited all their friends to come over, and like my grandpa's younger brother talked for 20 minutes to me about the tractor that you saw earlier. You know, that kind of relationship allows me to connect with my family in deep and emotional ways. This is my mom playing Mastermind with my grandpa, who I used to play Mastermind with my grandpa. To see a photo of them doing that same thing was really impactful. Yeah, just like incredible photos of childhood in a different era of the United States. This photo came up, and I had never seen this before. The reason I was so impacted by one pictures of my grandpa is because at some point in his farming career, he had a terrible farming accident that disfigured his left side of his face, and really he was one step away from dying on the operating table. And so this photo is him sitting next to all the flowers that people had brought the family. I didn't know this photo existed. And when this just popped up in the photo collection, you can imagine that this is a pretty emotional thing to see about your family, the history, the stories you've heard, but then the stories that they told at that 90th birthday gathering was really, really awesome. And the one thing that I couldn't have expected is that my grandpa had a fall and passed away a couple months later. And so these photos now hold significant value because it was the last big gathering of our extended family to talk and share about old times and whatnot. And he passed away a couple months later. And so, yeah, this process is one instance of a tiny bit of simple technology that has had an immense impact, where now my grandma had her 90th birthday party, and the whole family said, Caleb, we got to bring out the photos again. These are very sweet little things that my dad and grandma have said. But I didn't realize, for my grandma, she had separated out all the photos per child. She was going to gift them the individual slides based on if it was a picture of them and their friends and whatever. And I was like, well, I can just digitize them and just send it to everybody. And that to her was revolutionary. There is some amount of post-processing for slides that have been degraded over time. And I have this long-term future theory that if I collected enough slides, digitized enough, I could develop profiles based on the film stock, how old it is, what conditions it was kept in, and then just apply the right preset on top of whatever that era was. But yeah, this process is just the ability to connect with your family over one tiny little thing. The tech is not the interesting work, but it's the stories that it unlocks. When you choose what you want to build, what you want to work on, I think there's a lot of different directions that I could go philosophically with why this is important. But I think at the same time, we all have unique skill sets. Mine with a simple ESP32 thing. It's not exciting. It's not really I think there's just a lot of ways where we are trained as engineers to build stuff for a very specific purpose, as a job or whatever. We fall into the typical roles that we happen to fall into. But what's relatively simple to do with this project unlocked a lot of value for many of them. So I just want to encourage you all to think about what are the random skill sets that you bring to the table that maybe you can apply in a totally different field that might be really meaningful for your friends and family and community. That's all I got.